Welcome along, people. Welcome to Tankslap Moto. Join me today on my Monster 1200S. We'll go for a little ride and introduce you to my bike. So yeah, this one's the 2015 Monster 1200S. It's 145 horsepower, about 186 or 88 kilos. I assume that's a dry weight. This one's actually got the Termagoni slip-on with the up map, which probably gives it around another sort of 3 to 5 horsepower. So somewhere in the 150 horsepower range, and it makes for an exciting ride. Coming through this little village here. It's quite well mannered, doesn't like being much below sort of 3,000, you know, but it can do it, you know. It's not a complete bone shaker below 3,000 for a big 1200cc V-twin. And the fueling's really good, especially now it's had the Termagoni up map. It's sort of really soft, like smoothened out that lower RPM range. Apparently when they do the remap, they do something on what they call the closed map fueling, or closed loop fueling I should say. And I think that's when you're off the throttle, the injectors still give a little bit of fuel, so that when you come back on the throttle it's actually quite smooth. A lot of modern bikes, they like fuel injected modern bikes, that initial throttle opening could be quite snatchy, and yeah, the upmat seems to have sorted that out, which is nice. And it also deletes the exhaust valve as well. I think the manufacturers say that the exhaust valve operates at, you know, lower RPM ranges and throttle inputs to give you like a flatter torque curve, but I think really and truly it's just for noise emissions, because I haven't noticed any drop off in torque. So this one, being the S model, has also got the Olin suspension, which is actually, yeah, it's really good. It's you know, it's that cliche between, you know, being nice and firm but also supple for the small bumps. Oh, it's the cyclist. They like that, didn't they? Got the quick shifter on this one. It's only an up quick shifter. I fitted that myself. It's a Translogic one. It works really well. A little bit fiddly to set up, but once you get it set up, it's really good. It's the dual channel one, so you've got different interrupt times on the ignition depending on your RPM. When I was doing a bit of research, I was looking into it to buy it. You know, there's something had to take into account, whether it was dual channel. I think that's why quick shifters of old had the reputation that, you know, they only work high up the RPM range, whereas this one's not too bad. I mean, change gear at like 4 now. And yeah, she's a lovely handling bike. You know, feels real light on its feet for a big, powerful bike. And I think the overwhelming experience when you ride it, you know, it's dominated by the motor. It's got so much sort of character and charm, but it's a real sort of torque monster. I think it's something like 91 pound-feet, and that really just translates to like an effortless surge. You know, anywhere above sort of 4,500, 5,000 RPM, this bike's making serious progress. Which is nice. I think on the road, you know, there's a lot to be said for having that kind of power band. You know, you certainly don't have to chase revs on this. You can be puding along at 3,000, twist the wrist, 5,000 RPM, the bike's lifting the front wheel with the, you know, it's right in the meat of its torque. I think there's a lot to be said for big V-twins on the road. You know, you've got all of that power, but it's just compressed into a much narrower rev window. You know, what does it rev to? 10.5, 11. But all the power is probably over by sort of 9. But it's just having that real meaty mid-range. You know, there's no changing down gears. It's just twist the wrist and you are off big time. I've currently got the suspension in the somewhere between the comfort setting and the sort of standard setting. I've tried the firmer setting, but it's too firm for me. I mean, even if you ride hard, I think it's nice to have a bit of movement underneath you. You know, I think that's one of the areas where a lot of people go wrong on the road. You know, they ride bikes that are too stiff, and then they try and ride fast, and the bike skips and hops, and you know, you end up running wide, and it's just, the whole thing feels dangerous, in my opinion. Much better with a softer setup. You know, even if you think you are a bit of a hero and you like to push it, you'll get a more rewarding experience from a softer setup. You've got the different modes as well: sport, touring, urban. I personally tend to just stick in the one mode, really. I like the medium engine setting, so you've got high, medium and low, and that's kind of like your throttle response. You get the same 150 horsepower in all the modes. Had the ABS set on 1. You barely ever feel it intervening, to be honest. You've got to be going real crazy to have it intervene and hit some bumps. The same with the traction control. Traction control really works really well on this bike. I got it set to level 2. It'll let you slide. You know, it won't let anything too crazy happen. Makes a nice crackle in the rain if you light it up. It's sort, you can hear it intervening. It's very smooth. But yeah, she's a bit of a rocket. I'll demonstrate now, 4,000 RPM. But yeah, going back to the modes, I can see why manufacturers put the different throttle modes in there. Really and truly, you want to find one mode on the throttle that you like and get used to it. Otherwise, you're tripping yourself up. A bit dual carriageway. Roll it on second gear. Very lively. Spun up good there, but it's very controllable as well, you know. Certainly likes to boogie, this bike. Keeps you on your toes. I mean, after all, that's what we want from motorcycling, isn't it? You know, to feel alive. It's just instant torque. I think that's what really dominates the riding experience on this bike, just this huge wallop of torque. Anywhere above 3,000 RPM, it's just rapid. Another great feature on this bike is the Brembo Brakes. It's got the all singing, all dancing calipers, not the Stylema ones, the M50, that's the word I was looking for, M50 calipers, and they are super powerful. That initial feel is what really sort of sets them apart from other brakes that I've tried. You know, it's not so much the outright power, but it's just that feel, you know, that initial sort of half a second of braking. There's no wheelie control as such. It's there's traction control, and to be honest, I've never run the traction control high enough to see if it does intervene. The higher you turn it up, the less wheelie action you'd get. You know, it's obviously driven off of the rear wheel speed sensor, and if you try to clutch it up, it must detect that momentary sort of slip in traction. and shut it down. I've heard people say on the later bikes it's all linked in as to whether the bike's got an IMU, whether it can, you know, separate the two functions. So maybe this bike does have an IMU, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, the electronics are really good. The whole bike's just a class bit of kit, really, and I think it's a bike that's overlooked in a lot of ways. You know, everyone's mad for the Hypernakeds, and you know, this probably isn't quite a Hypernaked, but it's not far off. You know, you look at the numbers: 150 horsepower, 180 kilos, 90 odd pound-feet of torque. It's a serious bike. But yeah, I think it's slightly overlooked. You know, there's not a huge amount of content out there, really. Maybe because it's been around for a while, but it's kind of that classic look as well. It's definitely a bit different. Horses. Don't want to upset them. That wallop of torque just becomes addictive. It's very difficult not to use it, really. Sun's back out. They said it might rain. I hope it don't, but we will see. If you're in the market for this bike, one thing it does get is a lot of attention. I don't know if it's the Ducati Red, but it seems to be wherever you take it, people do tend to drool over it. And not just bikers, actually. You know, there's a lot of people that have probably got no interest in bikes. They always seem to come up to you in the pub and say, "Oh, what's that Ducati? Yeah, I'd like one of them." A lot of people say it's like the Ferrari of motorbikes. You know, I'm not sure I'd go that far, but you do get that special feel with a Ducati. It just has that little bit of charm that perhaps other manufacturers don't. That Italian flair at its finest. From the engine note to just everything about it, really. You know, there's a lot of attention to detail on this bike. You know, even looking at the triple clamps. They're typical Italians. You know, no stones unturned. You know, no bit of the bike looks messy. There's no ghastly wires anywhere. It's very much a premium bike, you know, a lot of premium parts. The suspension, to the wheels, to the brakes. One of my previous bikes actually was a Vespa 200, and I've got to say it was one of the most fun bikes I've ever had. So make of that what you will. You know, you don't always need 150 horsepower to have fun. In terms of negatives, I mean, there are a few. It's like anything, you know, when you own something for a while, certain bits tend to grate on you. You know, being 1200 cc's a V-twin, it's never going to be the smoothest bikes. You know, I wouldn't say it's vibey, but you know, it can be a bit chuggy sometimes down low in town. You know, it's certainly no 4-cylinder. I really like the riding position. You know, it's quite sporty for a naked, but you know, it might not be to everyone's taste. Like your legs are certainly in more of a sort of sports bike position. You know, they're sort of set back and quite tucked up. But I mean, I've never really had any problems with sort of aching knees. Your arse starts to ache after probably 2 hours in the saddle, but you know, I think everyone's had enough by then, you know. Yeah, we took it touring in Wales as well. You know, we did some long days in the saddle there, and yeah, it was one of the more comfortable bikes that we had on that tour. One complaint that's well documented on these bikes is the exhaust and the foot peg. Sometimes the backs of your boots hit the pillion foot pegs and the exhaust, but like you soon get used to it. But it is a bit of an annoyance. You know, if you could change one thing, that'd probably be it. It's surprisingly okay for a pillion as well, actually, if anyone's interested. I've had the missus on the back. Not that she's very into bikes, but she said it was comfortable for the sort of 20 minutes that we was on it on a trip down to the pub. In terms of tyres, it comes, the OE tyres, I think Pirelli Diablo Rosso 2s, you know, very, very sticky tyres, nice tyres, but they wear out. I sort of killed them off in about 2,000 miles. So I've now gone to the, stuck with Pirelli, but they're the Angel GT2s, which is more of a touring tyre. The front tyre actually looks like the World Superbike wet. You can't really see it now, but and I think they're fabulous. You know, I think that's another area where people go wrong on the road. You know, they go and buy the stickiest rubber. But, you know, sometimes you can get, you know, they're quite temperamental. You know, it's not great for the road. But you know, what's great about these, you know, you've got 90% of the grip of something like a Super Corsa, but yet, you know, it warms up the moment you get on it. You know, it's more stable in a lot of ways, especially, and in the wet, it's phenomenal in the wet. You know, you can take liberties in the wet on this bike. Shake and bake, boys. To move on. You know, if you want something that looks good, it's a little bit different, but can still get a serious lick on, you know, this could be the bike for you. It's got great handling, you know, it's reassuring. It does wiggle and move, but it feels like, you know, that it's all under control, provided you're holding on, of course. Around some twisties. Smoothest of roads, but good fun all the same. Here she is, Ducati Monster 1200S. Beauty, isn't she? As you can see, the turbognones, full carbon. Really does add to the sound of this bike. Highly recommend if you are going to buy one, definitely invest in some turbognones. See the single swing arm, and look at the paint on that. Look at the finish. Öhlins rear shock, fully adjustable. But as I say, beautiful, beautiful bike. Draped in bits of carbon everywhere. Premium bits all over it. And it goes like the proverbial off a shovel. So there you have it.